Thanks for joining. I am Travis Sturek with Peplink, and today we're here to talk to you about Unbreakable VoIP, how to keep your conversations always going, always smooth. And we've got two guests today to talk to us just exactly about that. So I'll introduce our two speakers today. We've got Gordon Beck from USA Phone. Gordon, go ahead and say hello to everyone.
Hey, thanks for having us, Travis. Thank you.
Yeah. And then we've got Jonathan Pitts from One Simple Phone. Jonathan, go ahead and say hi.
Hey, everybody.
Well, cool. So, lately we've been focusing on really trying to get folks who are using Peplink in their daily lives and in their daily jobs, in their careers, so that they can come and talk to us about, why it is that they've chosen Peplink and what it is that Peplink's able to help them do and problems that they're able to solve with Peplink. And so these two folks are in the voice over IP industry every single day, putting phones out there, supporting voice over IP phones, and these two folks have both chosen Peplink to help them do that. And so again, we're going to dig deeper into that and kind of what it is about Peplink that makes voice over IP always work for them. So if you're not familiar with Peplink, we get used in a lot of different areas. And so our whole goal is to make it always work, and whatever it is for you or your customers that you need to work all the time. And so Peplink has some unique technologies that allow us to make it always work every single time, so that whether it's voice over IP or streaming video or some sort of IoT application or public safety, right? There's just so many different ways that people are using Peplink. But again, everybody's primary goal is just to make it work every single time that they go to use that thing that they need to do their jobs with. And so we're able to get into a lot of these different areas because we have a lot of different products, right? We have our $299 BR1 Mini, we've got our EPX, the 2U kind of $30,000-ish type of specialty product, and all kinds of devices in between. We've got wireline, we've got 4G, we've got 5G. And so these different models and hardware form factors allow us to be relevant to different folks, whether it's a kiosk or a voice over IP provider or somebody doing really mission critical public safety applications out in the field. Again, it's this wide variety of different hardware and models that allows us to be relevant for those different users and scenarios and help us solve their problems. But it takes more than just a box to fix these problems, right? Buying a new router, buying a new gadget isn't going to fix your problems on its own. And so it's this bottom layer here that we bring to the table that really brings the unique value to be able to solve these problems. So we've got our SpeedFusion VPN technology. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second here. We've also got our InControl 2 management system that lets you manage all of this stuff remotely from the cloud, lets you troubleshoot and really scale your operations without having to do field service and troubleshooting live with people out in the field. You're able to take care of a lot of those needs just remotely with a few clicks. And then we've got SpeedFusion Cloud and SpeedFusion Connect. See, these are new services that we'll talk about to help make it easier to just get high quality connectivity wherever you're trying to stay connected at. So SpeedFusion is really the big difference. There's lots of different LTE routers out there. There's lots of 5G routers, but none of them have SpeedFusion except for Peplink. And it really is a big deal, right? Other vendors make these 4G, 5G routers. They even have routers that have multiple radios in them, but they're not able to solve problems the way that Peplink is because they don't have SpeedFusion. And so what does SpeedFusion do and how does it benefit a user? There's a few different ways that you can use it. In short, SpeedFusion lets you take multiple connections and make them behave like one much stronger connection so that your applications don't know if it's using a wireline or an LTE or a 5G. And it doesn't know if we shift it from one to the other, right? We're able to use SpeedFusion to dynamically do that all in the background so that these applications don't know that there's any change in internet connection, where other cellular routers aren't able to do that. They'll set up your connection on either your wireline or your LTE or 5G. And if there's a problem with that individual connection where your voice call or your video call got set up, that connection will suffer. Your application will suffer until it breaks completely. Then it will fail over and then it will come back, but you get interrupted. You suffer through that during the transition, where with SpeedFusion, we take all of that out of your application's visibility and make that happen seamlessly. So you can use SpeedFusion to do a few different things. You can take multiple connections and you just want to get more speed. So we call that bandwidth bonding. So you can do that for large file transfers or video surveillance where you've got just high data rate applications that need to go through. But oftentimes people just want things to hand off clean, right? They want hot failover. So if they've got a voice over IP phone, or if they've got a credit card machine, if their landline gets interrupted, they just want that call to stay up. They want that credit card swipe to go through and process and not fail. And so that's what hot failover does. If there's an interruption right in the middle of your call, right in the middle of that credit card swipe, we hand it from the landline to the 4G or 5G connection. And again, the user, the applications, they don't know that they just switched and they don't get interrupted. They just stay up and keep going and finish that call or transaction. And then WAN smoothing is a way to make your audio quality, your video quality better. So if you've got multiple connections and you've got just, we've all seen it, right? Either the audio gets garbly or gets kind of skips and gaps, or the video gets blocky and kind of herky jerky. That's because your connection's just not able to keep up consistently, right? It's not about peak speed, it's about consistent speed, right? And so that's what WAN smoothing does, is it uses both connections to send backup copies to make sure that every single second, every single packet is going to get there in the fastest, most reliable way possible. And if one connection fails, the other's already there to back it up. And so those are the three basic ways that SpeedFusion is able to address problems with different applications or optimize different applications. So now we're going to dive more specifically into the voice over IP world again. So we've got a simple diagram here. We've got the internet, we've got a wireline, and then we've got some sort of, a backup connection. So usually a 4G or a 5G connection. And then there's just all sorts of devices here. And so, Gordon, I'll open it up to you first to just kind of talk about, how you're using Peplink out in the field and what kind of applications you're using it to protect.
Yeah, absolutely. So our big advantage bringing SpeedFusion in is, when a wireline goes down, broadband goes down, we're able to fail over seamlessly to the cell backup. And what that provides is a consistent IP through the SpeedFusion cloud. That way phones don't need to re-register. They can still get phone calls immediately. We're not dropping phone calls. And in certain instances, we're backing up credit card machines and POS systems for customers to make sure that their critical money-making devices are actually online all the time.
Who's like a typical customer of yours, of USA Phone? How would you kind of
anything from
categorize
a
them?
pizza shop to small business, law firms? Obviously pizza shops are very important, that their phones stay online. They need to be able to take those orders, and their credit card machines stay online so they can process those orders. So, those types of applications are very, very important, that everything stays online and consistent, and we're not seeing any kind of break in the connection.
Yeah, if it's 6 o'clock on a Friday and the phones go down at the pizza store, that's
Yep,
an expensive problem.
That's bad news.
Okay, Jonathan, how about you? What kind of users and applications are you deploying Peplink out there with?
Sure, Travis, thanks. So same as Gordon, we also protect, POS and credit card machines, but also like business email. So we have several chains of medical companies as well as chiropractors, and, they just need to be able to reliably get those phone calls and be able to process credit card transactions for payment. We also do a lot of food trucks and stuff like that, so that they have dual cellular, so that they don't have to run offline or use a Square and things like that. They'll be able to process the transaction and guarantee payment. And that's a huge thing, because especially with, chip and PIN, if they, do it offline and the credit card gets declined after, it comes back, then they're out that money.
Yeah, I've kind of seen that actually at a local coffee shop here, where the internet's down and their Square reader just keeps taking transactions, but they're not verifying anything, right? It's
Absolutely.
just kind of took the brain away for a little bit, and they're just going on hope that those cards are good for the money. And yeah, that's
right. And that's where like the new Transit Pro would be a great addition, being able to have multiple cellulars for on-site venues, so that, if the cellular network's too crowded because of too many people, at least you have multiple options to get it out.
That's really interesting. I mean, the pop-up scenario is awesome, because I think for me, the line is really blurred between like what's a you know, people with Peplink, people always ask like, oh, is that a mobile router? Is that a business, you know, an office router? And it's really hard to say one or the other, because like you said, it could be a kiosk or a, you know, a small shop in a stadium where, you know, they're not mobile necessarily, but yet, like you said, the need for good connectivity is still there, and maybe they move from this location to that location in the same building, and so being able to kind of take that kit with them and have the same experience no matter where they are every time is obviously valuable to that type of user. But yeah, just that transition from wireline to, I don't know if it's fixed or mobile, or, you know, depends on the day kind of scenario, is
Right.
kind of snuck up on us all, I think, because yeah, every sort of retail outfit wants to have some sort of mobile or pop-up presence, it seems like now. So I think there's kind of a division line here now between our two guests. There's a couple different ways that you can utilize Peplink and SpeedFusion to address whether it's voice over IP or other issues, other connectivity challenges you've got. So we're going to give each guest here some time to talk about the approach that they've taken and how they're using that path to solve their problems. And so we've got basically two paths that you can take here. To get SpeedFusion connectivity, you can use our SpeedFusion Cloud. That's a hosted service that we're providing, and we've got nodes all over the world to make it easy to get up and going. And then we also let users deploy their own SpeedFusion nodes, and so they can run their own kind of private SpeedFusion network. And there's advantages and trade-offs to each of these. And so Gordon, I think we'll start out with you. Here's the global SpeedFusion Cloud map, and you know, again, it's global, so we've got nodes all around the world. But you're USA phone, and you're in the USA, like myself, yep. And so you can see we've got a lot of nodes just across the country here in the US.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as a VoIP provider, we do not manage some of our infrastructure. So when you don't manage your infrastructure, being able to do a SpeedFusion SD-WAN into or near our providers' data centers helps us make sure that connection is going to always stay up. So generally, our main nodes are since we're in New Jersey, is in the New York area, as well as Dallas is kind of our failover. So, you know, when we have a phone that's connected to the New York data center, we're putting it across the SpeedFusion cloud to Peplink's data center in New York. And then we're just a couple hops away from there to our actual infrastructure being managed by another company.
Okay, so you're just basically shipping a Peplink router out to your customer and getting it, you know, using the software tools to get it connected to SpeedFusion Cloud.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
so we
go ahead.
Yeah, so we basically deploy mostly balanced 20Xs. We have some BR1s out there as well. And, you know, with Prime Care and SpeedFusion Cloud being included in Prime Care, we just deploy the Peplink. We usually put a cellular SIM card in there, the customer's broadband, and then we connect it up to SpeedFusion Cloud. This way, when a phone is connected, when we look at the registrations on the back end, they're all coming from SpeedFusion Cloud's IP addresses. So that means if we have a failover event, the broadband goes down and we failed over to LTE, that consistent IP address is what's helping us keep those phones registered, as well as being able to still communicate and not drop that call.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's easy to understand if you've got hosted infrastructure out there and you just need a solution to make it work. Like, you know, having VPN servers and SD-WAN gateways and all this stuff to manage yourself it's just a lot, and it's kind of,
yeah, it takes extra staff that you don't necessarily, you know, want to hire. So, you know, having Peplink take care of that for us is a huge advantage for us.
Very cool. So I think on the other side, we've got One Simple Phone and we've got the more self-hosted path. And so, Jonathan, I'll hand it over to you to kind of talk about how you've built your SpeedFusion network and why you've chosen this path to deploy SpeedFusion.
Thanks, Travis. So SpeedFusion is Peplink's core product, and this existed long before SpeedFusion Cloud, but it also solves some things that SpeedFusion Cloud isn't able to solve, or, you know, there's just different deployment strategies of why you would choose SpeedFusion versus SpeedFusion Cloud. We own all of our infrastructure all the way down to, the voice nodes that it's installed in. So we have, either colo arrangements in Dallas and Columbus, as well as, just rented virtual machine infrastructure in Google East and Google West, which allows us to cover the entire US. And from that, we're able to establish direct, multiple VPN tunnels with our clients direct to our infrastructure, all the way down to the individual IP address of the phone, which allows us flexibility to log in direct to the phone itself, and also do, some interesting strategies with, PRI over SD-WAN that we'll talk about later in the demonstration. It's not to say that, one deployment strategy is right or wrong. It just depends on the needs of the client. And we've chosen to do, direct routed IPs directly to the phone, just for, ease of troubleshooting direct from the voice node. We can, ping that direct IP. We don't have to worry about any NAT translations. We're able to install our routers in front of, behind, or side by side in the client's environment. And it's just very flexible with that. And VLAN tagging, we can separate out all of the voice infrastructure so that the client's PC router, if they have one, could completely go offline, but the voice service would still stay up. We utilize, 20X, BR1 Pros. We're also utilizing the SpeedFusion Connect LTE on-demand service that we'll talk about later. Is there anything else you wanted me to cover, Travis?
I think, so it sounds, you've built your own infrastructure because you're hosting other components as well. Do you find your customers are looking for additional services beyond just, keep my phones working well? Are they using like the VPN connectivity between sites, or are there other things that they're able to do with that?
We have done that, Travis. We've done it for, clients to be able to share, a network drive at their corporate location. They can route through our tunnels, through our data centers, and then out to the direct endpoints, so that they can access their, G drive or, corporate resources direct as if they were in the office.
So it's more of a, I guess, a full SD-WAN experience. I mean, they're both approaches are truly SD-WAN, but you're giving them more of an end-to-end SD-WAN, where on the SpeedFusion cloud side, you're maybe only protecting an application or two with that SD-WAN.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
correct. You would do this when you want to be able to access other resources. We've also, hosting all of our own infrastructure also gives us the flexibility to offer public IP to clients. We had a client, they're a nonprofit autistic center, and their fiber got cut, and they needed to reestablish all of their IPsec tunnels to their other locations. So by having, public IPs available in our data centers, we're able to map a public IP from our data center directly down to their device, allowing them to reconnect all of their, Cisco Meraki's and stuff like that. And the Peplink's able to, offer that kind of like an SD-WAN as a service in that type of scenario.
I'm glad you mentioned IPsec, because it's something that I keep seeing over and over again. And I see it both with SpeedFusion Cloud and with the self-hosted SpeedFusion path, is that, a lot of companies with, several locations have used IPsec to provide that site-to-site connectivity. And so they've got, a wireline, maybe they've got a failover solution in place as well, but just the nature of IPsec, it does not fail over seamlessly, right? It's a make and then break and then reestablish and come back up type of experience. So what I've seen a lot of customers doing now is they're just preserving that IPsec infrastructure, and they're putting a Peplink in front of it so that they can run SpeedFusion and just leave the VPN as it is. But we're basically tricking IPsec into being all of a sudden a seamless handoff experience.
It's pretty awesome. It has no idea that there's multiple internets in front of it, and everything just works as it always did.
So they can keep all their routing and VPNs and all that stuff intact, but yet all of a sudden now they've got this bulletproof SD-WAN in front of it. And yeah, it's just fun to see, like, again, I thought of SpeedFusion as an alternative to IPsec, but more and more we're seeing it's actually a complement to IPsec, because it's just hard and expensive to re-engineer a lot of these networks that are already out there. And so it's just cool to see that kind of maybe unexpected use case there.
Agreed.
Okay, so I think we'll switch away from the VPN and SpeedFusion infrastructure, and we'll talk more about the management and day-to-day use case. And so InControl 2 is a tool that I use constantly myself, but from your guys' perspectives, let's dig into that a little bit. I know we're going to start out here and talk about a new feature that we just launched with InControl, but overall, there's a lot of different tools in InControl that make remote management and just standing and operating these networks a lot more user-friendly and a lot more able to stay remote instead of having to do field trucks, truck rolls and field installations and sending technicians to a location. So before I jump over to you folks, I'm just going to introduce to everyone here, we've got a new feature again in InControl that's called InTouch. And so InTouch is a tool that we've got to really modernize remote management. And so, you've got all these Peplink routers deployed at all these customer sites. And again, you don't want to go there because it's expensive and it's far away and it's going to take time, right? So you want to be able to troubleshoot as much as you can from your office, from wherever you are. And so companies over the years have taken a lot of different approaches to enable this. They've called it out-of-band management, or OOBM, as we're showing here. And so that concept has been around for a long time, right? Especially enterprises that build large remote networks. They've got their primary ISP, and then they've got some sort of a secondary path into that network. So oftentimes they'll get a different ISP. Maybe they'll get a DSL instead of a cable modem, or if they've got a T1 from a provider, they'll get, again, that cable or DSL, but some sort of secondary path, so that if there's a problem with that primary network, they've got a way to get their administrators in there and troubleshoot, right? Is my router down? Is it just my internet connection that's down? Did a switch fail, right? There's all these devices that are out at these remote sites, and people need to get in and troubleshoot those. And so again, in the past, oftentimes they had to build a full separate network to plug into these management interfaces of these devices so that they can get in when there's a problem. Other solutions have just used like simple VPNs, or there's dedicated applications that do remote management type of functions. And so, there's servers and software packages and things like that people have used and installed to provide this type of functionality. But now with InTouch, if you've got a Peplink router out at any location, now you can log into any device that's behind that Peplink router. So if you've got switches or firewalls or IP phones, as we're talking about here today, or IP cameras, all these different devices that you've got remotely out behind these Peplinks, you can now log right into those web UIs, get into those serial consoles, whatever interface you need to talk to, so that you can do that all in band. You don't have to build a separate network. You've already got your wireline and your failover LTE or 5G connection on the Peplink. And so why not use both for both the users and your administrators, right? Give them both a seamless experience so that they can get in remotely, and your users can take advantage of both connections to stay up for their applications as well. So in the past, out-of-band management really didn't benefit the users, right? It was a separate path that was only there for the admins. And now with InTouch, you can have that second path available for everybody. And then you don't have that infrastructure. You don't have to build VPN servers or remote management systems and pay for all that extra infrastructure and licensing. So I'm going to just switch over to a demo quick here. I'll show you guys how this works because it's really easy to set up. And then we'll jump back into the conversation. Okay, you guys should be seeing an InControl screen. Jonathan or Gordon, you want to just let me know if you? Okay,
yep, absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so I've got a device here. Oh, I'm going to back up. This isn't the device I wanted. Okay, so I've got a router at my house. I'm not at home right now, but nonetheless, if we take a look at the client list here, let's just see what's all on the network. So if I'm remotely trying to support this location here, I've got an HP printer that's giving me problems. And so I need to get into that printer and just figure out what's wrong with it, right? Is it out of toner? Is it jammed? What's going on, right? All I know is users can't print. So I can see the printer on the network here. I can click this InTouch button. And so it automatically identifies the IP address and all that fun stuff about the device. And there's lots of different ways that you can get into these devices. Now, this device has a web interface, so that's what I'm going to use. But you can see we've got SSH, Telnet, remote desktop, VNC. There's lots of different ways that you could connect to remote devices. So whether it's a server or a phone or whatever the type of device is, there's different ways that you might want to reach that. You can also control kind of who can see this device. So if I've got different tiers of users in my in-control system, I can either make these remote connections available to them or take them away from those users. So I've got control to give more tools to my read-only users that maybe I don't want them to make changes on things, but yet I still want them in here helping me troubleshoot. But nonetheless, I made a couple of clicks, I saved that. And now I can click on this go button right here and pull up that interface. I don't know if the screen share is following this connection here. It
is
cool. So yeah, I've pulled up this printer. Now I'm logged right into it. And the really important thing here is I've not opened any ports to the internet, right? I have not exposed any sort of openings in my network. This is all secured through HTTPS, even though this printer's website or web interface is not a secure website. I'm securely connected to it through in-control, right? We're wrapping that encryption around all of these connections. So even if you're using an unsecure protocol like Telnet or HTTP, that's all secure over from the internet's view, because again, we've taken all of those port forwarding and exposed ports and kind of wrapped that protocol in our own encryption so that we don't have to do that in a unsecure way. So that's how InTouch works. Again, I just set it up in a handful of clicks, so really, really easy to do. And again, you don't need any VPNs or any extra software to make this work. You just need a Peplink router and an active care plan on it. So I'll switch back to the presentation here now.
Yeah, I mean, we've already started using this in our own daily troubleshooting. Being able to log into a phone remotely really quick, run a packet capture on a phone, log into a switch, change some port settings, stuff like that. It's been very helpful and very quick.
It's a great complement to the VPN services as well. Do we have to have a specific firmware version for that?
Yeah, so you need the newest firmware 8.2.0. It's a new feature that just launched with that firmware. And then on the in-control side, that's been rolled out. On the cloud side, so the first version that came out supported, I believe, just HTTP, HTTPS, and maybe one other protocol. But my environment that you saw here has a faster release schedule of in-control. And so you can see we've added remote desktop and VNC. And so we're just adding more protocols to that. So depending on which planet you're on in-control, you may see some of those new capabilities sooner than others. The 8.2.0 firmware still supports these new capabilities. So it's kind of a hand-in-hand relationship with in-control and the device firmware. But yeah, 8.2.0 is what you need on the router. And then you just need an active SpeedFusion cloud license to send those remote connections through. You don't have to actually set up SpeedFusion Cloud, but we just meter that usage on InTouch, because some people want to pull up cameras or VNC servers or RDP servers that are going to, eat a fair amount of bandwidth as you use them remotely. But yeah, that's we're trying to make it as simple and easy and lightweight as possible for folks.
Is it available in Mars and Earth?
Yeah, it is available in Mars and Earth. It's just the newer protocols like remote desktop and some of those ones won't show up in Mars or Earth yet. Those will show up so I'm on Venus, which is basically the beta planet for in-control. And so I'm seeing those features now where those extra protocols will be added later on the other planets.
Now, if somebody didn't have a SpeedFusion Cloud current plan, would it show an error when trying to connect on InTouch, or do you have more information on that?
It does, yeah. I hit that wall this morning when I was just checking my demo environment. Actually, I exhausted my SpeedFusion Cloud license at home, and so I had to it'll give you an error. It'll tell you exactly that. It'll say,
Okay, good.
you're out of SpeedFusion Cloud data, right? So it makes it pretty straightforward to identify that's your problem. And so again, you don't have to set up the SpeedFusion Cloud tunnels for this to work. We automatically just utilize that license, whatever data bucket you've got available. And so, it's important for people to know that aren't familiar with SpeedFusion Cloud is every device comes with one of those licenses out of the box. If you bought a Peplink router, you've got a license for this already right now. And then if you continue to purchase any care plan, that also comes with a license for this automatically. So if you're in warranty or you just bought basically, if you're in warranty, you have access to this right now, unless you've already chewed through all that data. So, and if you have, you can top that up separately, and it's very, very, very reasonable to purchase additional data for these applications. You can scale your remote operations to as many locations as you want, and you can get as deep and detailed into the different remote management protocols, or if you just need to log into phones wherever they are, that's great too.
We got a couple questions on InTouch. I don't know if you want to address them now.
Yeah, that's probably a good spot to do that. Okay, so I see one question. I think I kind of answered this one already. Can you explain in more detail how you are able to utilize SpeedFusion Cloud? Do you set up SpeedFusion Cloud with default settings and use outbound policies? Okay, so I think that's more focused on just the general usage of SpeedFusion Cloud, not so much on InTouch, but nonetheless, I'll answer it since I dove into that. So with SpeedFusion Cloud, you can use the outbound policy manager just like you would with any other SpeedFusion connection or just any other Peplink application that you're trying to route in a specific way. So yes, you can use the outbound policy manager to integrate with SpeedFusion Cloud to control kind of what goes to SpeedFusion Cloud, but SpeedFusion Cloud also has a couple different easy buttons you can push. So you can just, kind of like I did with InTouch, you can just choose a client off the client list. You can say, I want that device to always go to this SpeedFusion Cloud node. So you can just map a single client device to a SpeedFusion Cloud connection. You can map an SSID to a SpeedFusion Cloud connection. So you can just have a single Wi-Fi SSID that always goes to a SpeedFusion Cloud connection. And you can also just, there's some easy buttons for carving out important applications like Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, Zoom, some of those really popular kind of collaboration applications. We've got just the ability to select those and steer those automatically. So even if your device in question is doing 10 other things, we're going to inspect all that traffic and find those critical collaboration applications and peel those over to SpeedFusion Cloud. So you can use those easy buttons, or you can use the traditional outbound policies, or you can kind of use both at the same time. So yeah, you've got lots of control over how your SpeedFusion Cloud connection is actually used.
Yeah, and Travis, we use the outbound rules. It makes it very simple because then we can just point all of the destination IP addresses to our nodes in New York or Dallas and just route all the traffic across the appropriate SpeedFusion Cloud tunnel. Okay,
so yeah, you don't have to get into all the port protocol stuff. It's just where your services all live, and so that's an easy rule to set up.
Yep.
Yeah, that's similar to how I've used it for my voice over IP phones too. Just I know where the server is, so anything going there, please protect it through the tunnel. Another question here: does InTouch require SpeedFusion Cloud, or can it be used with traditional SpeedFusion too? So it does require SpeedFusion Cloud. It's not set up to utilize an existing SpeedFusion infrastructure or self-hosted SpeedFusion infrastructure. But again, you don't have to set up any of the SpeedFusion Cloud settings. Actually, it's just purely using that data bucket to meter that usage, so that because this all basically runs through our infrastructure on InControl. And so if somebody's sitting there watching their DVR all day, Peplink would be getting billed for that data transfer. And so that's where the licensing component comes in on the SpeedFusion Cloud, is we're just able to utilize that data bucket that you've already got and subtract your usage from there. And so that way it's all tidy and anybody's usage is accounted for. And again, you don't have to set a bunch of extra stuff up to make it work. But yeah, it does not utilize an existing SpeedFusion connection. Okay, well, I think we'll keep going here. So another tool that we've got, I think we'll just talk about a variety of different tools in InControl, but I think these are some ones that Gordon and Jonathan have selected that are really relevant to them in supporting voice over IP customers out there. So first one here is just the WAN quality reports. Gordon, I don't know if you want to talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's a typical scenario. You got a customer calling in saying they're having some call quality issues or some drop calls. Usually our first stop is to take a look at the WAN quality reports, see if there's any outstanding latency or packet loss, or, maybe just up and down. Like, the Comcast modem is constantly going up and down. You'll get those flags with the WAN up, WAN down. It really helps us troubleshoot faster to make sure that we're providing that information back to the customer. Say, hey, you need to contact your ISP, or maybe just reboot your Comcast modem. You'll fail over to the LTE, so your phones are going to stay online, but at least you'll get a fresh modem reboot. And it's been a very, very, very big godsend to us being able to have historical data on any kind of link that we have going on.
Yeah, and I love this screenshot you grabbed here too, because this is a wireline Comcast connection, right? And I'm not picking on Comcast at all. Every network has their issues, depending on the day, but this is a wireline connection, and I hear it all the time. Like, no, I've got a good internet connection. I've got a gigabit internet connection. It's not my connection, right? And you look at the graph, and yeah, your connection's got problems here, right?
Exactly.
Most of the time, you're really stable here, but not all the time, right? If you look over right at the far left, that latency, that blue line is like they're spiking up to 200 millisecond latency all of a sudden for an extended period of time there, and that will cause problems with VoIP. And it's plain as day to see here on the graph. But yeah, without this data, you don't really have an answer for that customer most of the time.
Yeah, and being able to send this to a customer just to prove that what we're seeing is what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the previous one was this was a wireline connection, and so you've got a little bit of data there, and then here's an LTE connection, so you can see we've got a T-Mobile connection, and you get a lot more information here, right? There's a lot more to keep track of on a cellular connection.
Yeah, so you're tracking there. You still get your latency numbers, so you can see how bad your latency is. Obviously, that's important, especially when it comes to sustaining a decent VoIP call. How good your signal strength. Obviously, you can see this one's kind of bouncing between excellent and very good. So all that information helps you determine, hey, maybe I need to put an external antenna on this and get it closer to the outside of the building, or even put it on the outside of the building. Obviously, that signal strength when you're running calls over over your cellular is going to be very important.
Yep. And I like your comment about, moving the antenna. We just can't make signal happen, right? We have to do, if signal's your problem, then you've got antennas or placement, or, you've got something physical you're going to have to do, because the tower's not going to move. And, it could be years before another cell gets added in that area. So, if you can see clearly that you've got low signal strength in a location, then again, you're going to have to intervene some way with an antenna or moving the device or something like that. But, sometimes I see on these graphs that, signal strength is not my problem. It's just the quality goes up and down over the course of a day. And, that's something an antenna is probably not going to be able to help a whole lot with, right? If the network's getting saturated or, some sort of interference, your antenna won't fix that. And that's where you have to start looking at, do I need to look at a different provider, or, what you have to start kind of getting more creative when you run into those situations.
Absolutely.
Jonathan, are there any tools that you use on a day-to-day basis in here in control, just in general?
So we use the packet loss captures on our VPN tunnels, as illustrated here on the right, quite often. And this is actually an example of us troubleshooting the WAN quality issue with a client live while they're on the phone. So we set up the VPN tunnels in such a way that their wired connection is primary 1 and their cellular is priority 2, and also matching the same thing on the dashboard. Now, what happens when you set it up this way is we can actually move the cellular on the dashboard of the Max series devices live while we're on the call, and instantly improve the call quality, both seeing it on the latency and packet loss graph, but also audibly with the client, proving to them that the packet loss is actually on their wired connection. And that's just an immense tool to show them live while they're on the call that we're able to improve their connection.
That's pretty awesome because, like you said, you're able to actually improve the audio quality of the support call that they're
Yep.
making to you. I mean, that's the real world example of what SpeedFusion is able to do that other things can't, right? You can't dynamically insert a new connection to a voice over IP call with a cradle point router. Like, there's just no way to do that. It's pretty awesome that you're able to just turn up the dials and actually get their call quality improved right then and there on the phone. Okay, so I think the short story here is In Control is great for people think of it like, oh, I don't need that system, right? I've got the firmware I want on there. I've got the configs. I'm not going to change the configs, right? I don't really need this remote management stuff. But to me, it's really just the tools that you've got there to deal with these what if situations, right? When things don't go right, that's where these tools really come into play and start to show their value, is just giving you those capabilities without having to get out in the field and go there yourself, or sit there on the phone with somebody remotely kind of trying to fumble through the wiring closet that they don't understand and try and troubleshoot through somebody else. So next thing we're going to talk about is just how to keep connectivity simple with Peplink. What are your options when it comes to bringing different connections to your Peplink router to your customers, right? Because to me, the whole point of Peplink is no single internet connection is ever going to be good enough to support the business that you or your customers are trying to do, right? Again, it will fail at some point, right? No internet connection is perfect, and it will go down and it will degrade in certain circumstances. And those are times when you still want to do your business the way you always do your business. And so again, that's what Peplink's whole point is to solve those problems. But to solve those problems, you sometimes need a second connection there. And that's where things get kind of complicated for people. Sometimes they just, number one, they don't want to pay for that connection. Number two, they don't want to deal with two providers, right? It was hard enough to get one internet connection. Now you're telling me I have to go get another contract with another company and start, do that whole process over again. Like, no, thank you. So that's where we just launched SpeedFusion Connect. And so this is a new service that we're offering to our customers to provide that LTE data. And so it's just an easy button again to get access to Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, any three carriers in the US, so that, again, whoever's great in your area, you're going to be able to get access to them, and you don't have to set up contracts with all three carriers to do that. You've got an easy path to that connectivity.
And you can switch, if I'm not mistaken, Travis, between all three like instantaneously.
Yeah, correct. So it won't be a seamless handoff on the individual SIM, but you can switch that SIM from one carrier to another, and it'll just disconnect and reconnect. And obviously, if you have SpeedFusion running, it's going to smooth that process out. But switching the carrier on any single SIM is definitely available, and then it's quick, right? It takes 30 seconds to switch your carrier at any spot. So yeah, if you're just finding, the carrier you usually use doesn't have great signal for this customer, let's just switch it over and try one or the other carriers. And it's not a different rate. It doesn't cost you any different. It's just, pick whichever one is going to work at that location.
Yeah, that's universal.
Jonathan, this is something that you've been using in your deployments. Do you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Travis. We have been using it exclusively. We used to use primary Verizon Wireless, and we still do on occasion because our Verizon Wireless plan has public IPs. But for supporting our traditional VoIP customers, and also, some new interesting strategies that we've done, we've rolled out several hundred COVID internet hotspots across the US, and being able to use SpeedFusion Connect specifically with the not only our VoIP customers, but also the COVID hotspots has offered us immense capabilities that we weren't able to do before, such as being able to select, the carrier that's best at that location. Now, you can't automatically switch when that's your only provider, but if you already have a wired connection, or if you're using something like a transit duo, then you can actually switch to that other provider on that particular cell modem live and, instantly see a performance improvement. And then if you're coupling that with either, SpeedFusion or SpeedFusion Connect, you can still make it where you could switch providers for one of those cellulars without losing the connection and still keep that data up while switching providers. If you only have a single cellular modem and that's your only connection, it would go down, temporarily while it reacquires to another cellular provider. But I also wanted to talk just real quick, Travis, on the previous slide.
Mm-hmm.
So this is some things that we use in conjunction with SpeedFusion Connect. Specifically, we had Peplink add PLMN switchover to pushover. And if y'all aren't familiar with the notifications in Peplink, they've come a long way, and you'll want to review the notification sections on the group level because it supports the pushover app, which is it's a third-party app that you can load on your Android and iPhones, and there's tons of different events that you can get for your client's devices or your own devices on, if a carrier switched over, if the device is online, offline, and then InControl is, so much more than just, remote web access, which I think is a primary use case for a lot of people. It supports group policies, multiple firewall and outbound policies. We use the notifications again on the pushover app, as well as the API integration to, customize and show usage alerts to our client.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think, I've seen a couple comments or questions that already kind of coming through of people hungry for more like technical details, like how do you protect the VoIP? What are the things you're doing, and where are these features at? And so I think we're getting close to the end of the hour here, but I just want to point out now that after we're done with the presentation here, I will stay online and I'll actually go live into InControl and show some folks a few more of these details, where some of these knobs and dials are and where some of these reports and things like that are, so that people can see these more directly for those that are ready to dig in. But I'll keep moving on the slides here. So like I said, we've got the SpeedFusion Connect LTE service available to folks. Right now, it's supported on a handful of models here. You can see down on the left. And we are growing that list. That will continue to expand. If you're the type of user where you've only got a handful of locations, or you just don't need a whole lot of devices or a whole lot of these types of connections, that model list is basically where you're going to be able to do that with. And then this is the pricing that you have available to you. And if you've got like 50 or 100 devices where you need to kind of roll this out at scale, that's something where you're going to want to reach out to your channel partner, your reseller at Peplink, and we can have a more direct discussion about how to structure this better for a larger scale operation, so that it makes sense in those scenarios as well. So again, if you're on that handful of devices, these are plans that are available to you to, again, use all three carriers right now. But if you've got a larger scale operation, definitely reach out and we can talk more specifically about what makes sense for your scenario. I think there's some other interesting stuff here too, though. I mean, we're making data available as, just purely to make it as convenient and easy as possible for people who need to do this at scale. But we're not trying to get in the way of people who already have their own connections, who already want to bring their own SIM cards or service plans, right? We work very closely with a lot of different carriers to support their customers as well. And so that path is always available with Peplink. We're not limiting this to, our SIMs only or anything like that. This is just purely a complement so that you're able to get additional connectivity if it's hard for you to do that some other way.
You want me to talk about this real quick, Travis?
Yeah, I think this is a fun one that Jonathan put together here, because it's a great example of maybe a more unique way of using another connection that didn't come with the Peplink or didn't get sold by the Peplink.
So this was a company where they had already purchased a Ring Pro, which is the device connected to the AT&T network there on the left. And, we're implementing our voice over IP service using the Balance 20X here. And what we did is we set it up so that not only do we have access to the cellular from a management perspective in the 20X, but we're allowing the customer to reuse their existing cellular service that they're getting through the Ring Pro. So if people aren't familiar with the Ring Pro, it's a security appliance so that you can attach your Ring cameras, doorbells, other Z-Wave devices and use it as a security system. But we're also able to use it as a failover wired connection, either using the USB WAN or the soon to be public virtual WAN license of the 20X. So it's just another example of how, you know, even if you had a cellular backup device, you know, the 20X or a Peplink in general can complement that by, you know, using SpeedFusion Cloud over the top of an existing or another available cellular unit.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I mean, you know, it's obvious that you could take an AT&T SIM card and plug it into a Peplink, right? I mean, that's pretty straightforward. But when you've got a device like that Ring Pro, and those are very popular, right? Those Ring systems are, you know, you walk through your neighborhood and just about everybody's got one on their doorbell. But you know, being able to harness that built-in connectivity from a different device and repurpose that for protecting your phones is awesome.
Really thinking outside the box, Jonathan.
Here's another, I think, unique scenario that's pretty cool to me. I mean, a lot of what Peplink does is we're bridging the past to the present, right? There's all these legacy devices that people still use and people still need. And so, Jonathan, you've got a deployment here that really speaks to that same story. If you want to just kind of walk through this.
We did a deployment of an existing PRI circuit for a client over SD-WAN. So the scenario was, we're fine with our NEC system. It's going to cost an immense amount of money to redo all of the cable plant to where all the physical phones are located. But we're just not in love with our current provider that's providing that PRI circuit. You know, what solutions do you have for us? So in this scenario, we're actually using a Peplink 20X to some of our multiple data centers where we can provide a SIP trunk to PRI service over a Yaystar gateway direct connection into the NEC PBX. So there was no modifications that were needed to the client's existing PRI PBX. And we're able to provide a drop-in PRI over our existing infrastructure and leverage Peplink to provide an SD-WAN connection, which, you know, a typical PRI is a direct point-to-point connection. And now we're able to extend that over, you know, multiple internet providers and provide the customer with the same quality, actually better quality than they used to have with their existing PRI provider because it was always going down due to degraded copper.
So you've basically replaced miles and miles of single point of failure and replaced that with a modern multi-WAN, SD-WAN, and the phone system doesn't know the difference, right?
That's right.
That's cool. I think these are some other tools that you've used some of our APIs as well to do some unique things here. I think this is awesome.
So we use the Cloud Soft Phone, which is a you know, a software that can connect to, you know, multiple different kind of SIP backends, but we're utilizing the web services tab here with some really sweet integrations with the Peplink where we can show, you know, usage alerts, usage consumption, if the Peplink is online. So some of the things that we're doing here is, you know, is the Peplink connected? Is it connected with cellular? How much usage has it used? And then, you know, further on, we'll also leverage, you know, the ability to check, you know, active sessions in the Peplink, how many phones do I have online, so that, you know, a manager and owner can not only answer phone calls on their soft phone app, but they can also, you know, quickly at a glance, you know, see the state of their Peplinks and physical devices online at several of their locations.
Very cool. Yeah, I love the API access is something that I'm always really intrigued by. I mean, people have built so many neat custom dashboards that, you know, just get the useful information for their customers in front of their face so that they can just boil it down to exactly what that customer cares about and needs to see, and, you know, not give them that complicated, you know, to them complicated management system, right? So I think that covers all of the content we've got. We're just here at 1 minute left. So I'm going to open it up for Q&A. Jonathan and Gordon, if you guys have time to stick around for some questions, stay as long as you want. I'll stay on as long as it makes sense here and keep going. And yeah, if you got to drop, go ahead and drop. But yeah, I'm going to pull up the Q&A here just so everybody's aware. This webinar is recorded and it will be posted on our forum. So if you've registered for it, you'll get an email with a link to that probably within the next day here. So yeah, just if you registered and you need to jump off and you don't want to miss something, it'll be on the video shortly. So we'll make that available for everybody. I am just going to dig through the questions here and we'll start teeing those up. Okay, so first question I see, can the Peplink router replace the customer's Sonic Wall or WatchGuard router? So yes is the answer, but the nice thing is it doesn't have to either. So, you know, I've seen this, and I think pizza stores are a good example of that, of this, where, you know, you're not going to replace that router, right? They will not replace that router, and you cannot touch that router in most cases, right? That is their corporate firewall and appliance, and you have to figure out a way to make VoIP work without touching any of that. And so it's a great example of where Peplink's different software features make it easy to integrate there. I think, Jonathan, you've definitely ran into this scenario several times where you kind of got to play nice with what's already there. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So we're really good at, you know, working well with, you know, other IT departments, network, you know, franchise requirements, things like that. So we can be in front of where we can be in front of the Sonic Wall and just pass through some ports. We can be beside it. You know, if you have additional WAN IPs, we can be behind it, where we just leverage SpeedFusion connection actually through your existing router. And then there's a fourth scenario where it's drop-in mode. So if you have, you know, the public IP on the Sonic Wall, maybe you don't exactly have, you know, the current login in front of it, but you want everything to kind of seamlessly work. Drop-in mode is a huge win to be able to get yourself in front of and still be able to protect applications.
Awesome. Yeah. And, you know, for the folks that do want to replace that Sonic Wall or WatchGuard, there's lots of security features on the Peplink. So, you know, there's the traditional stateful firewall, which is awesome because you can manage that with and control in bulk. So you can manage 1,000 firewalls at once and add a rule or subtract a rule to all your locations quickly and easily. But we've also got layer 7 deep packet inspection, application blocking. So there's a lot of security tools available to folks that do want to replace that existing router and have something still be very secure. And again, SpeedFusion Connect and SpeedFusion are other ways to enhance your security. Again, you're not having to open up those ports directly to the internet like you might have done on a previous appliance. And so sometimes it's more of a, you know, a philosophical or an architecture change versus just, you know, having the same security features. You might use these tools differently to avoid needing some of these different security tools as well. But we've got an article on our website called Defense in Depth. So if you just use the search function on our website, I think if you just search the word defense, you'll find a good white paper that it really just outlines all the different layers of security features and functionality that we've got in the Peplink routers, so that you can kind of understand what's all there and what's possible.
Yeah, the other thing too with drop-in mode that I don't think a lot of people know is that with the latest release of drop-in mode, you can run drop-in mode in front of another firewall and still use another VLAN for your phones. So you can have a completely separate network for the phones running through the phone, and then everything else go through drop-in mode on the existing firewall.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much creativity available, you know, because you can, like you said, you can plug that new VLAN into their existing switch, even if they're able to kind of carve out a VLAN that matches on that side. But again, you're not interrupting any of their WAN infrastructure. So there's just a lot, or you can just plug it into your own switch for that matter. But yeah, there's just tons of tools there to make the integration part easy, depending on what the customer's requirements are. Okay. I see a question about SpeedFusion Connect data plans. You can purchase those through your resellers. Those are definitely available. There's partner discounts and things like that. So you've got, you know, I don't know exactly what the discounts are, but you know, there's silver, gold, platinum type of pricing discounts on those plans. So definitely very reseller friendly in that sense. I see one question on the chat. Is this available for privately hosted in control? And I think so. Number one, that's a good thing to talk about. Our in control management system is hosted in AWS. It's a public system. So, lots of different users have their own little private accounts on there. But some people will not allow public cloud management systems to be used for their data, right? They've got really sensitive security postures. Sometimes it's government, sometimes it's just a large enterprise. But another really unique aspect of Peplink is you can take that entire cloud management experience and deploy that in your own private network. So you can run the full featured in control experience in AWS, AWS GovCloud, Google Cloud, VMware ESXi, or Hyper-V. So you can run in control completely in your own infrastructure in a private network. And so you can comply with whatever security requirements a customer has. And InTouch, that feature that we just showed you, that is also available in that privately hosted configuration. So you're able to get every single feature you would out of the public in control in a private environment. So that is available. And again, you've got all of those features available if you do the privately deployed in control.
Yeah, it just requires a little extra setup, wildcard certs and things like that, but we've been able to set that up.
Yep. It's definitely more involved. I mean, it's not the easy path, right? Setting up and control yourself it takes more work, but there's very valid reasons that people want to be able to do that. And again, you can't do that with Cradlepoint. You can't do that with Meraki. You have to use their public hosted cloud if you're using those vendors. There's just no other option for them other than to subscribe to those systems if you want to keep using them. So there's no private path for those types of products.
I see a question here I'd like to get an answer from Travis on. Is SpeedFusion Connect going to be available for the Balance 20X anytime soon?
Yeah, that's a good one. So right now, SpeedFusion Connect is not native for the 20X. Again, we've got some other options for people who have a lot of devices out there. But we will be making that a native experience in the next hardware revision as well. So
nice.
For those of you that have them already, that won't probably help you in that case, because there is an additional hardware component in there to make it a fully native experience there. But again, those that have kind of higher volume needs, that's something that we'd be able to talk about and find a solution for there as well. So I see a couple people who've just made comments about, this device or that device they're having some issues with InTouch. In control, there is a little blue banner on the right-hand side usually that says feedback. And that's kind of the button that everybody ignores because they assume it goes into some, garbage bin that nobody ever looks into. But I'm proud to say that if you push that button in control and you leave some feedback or some question, or you've got a problem with something, it goes straight to people who can help and are willing to help and dig into that problem. So if you're having troubles with InTouch on a specific device, that feedback button is probably the quickest way to drill into that. If you're in that screen where you're trying to pull that up, push that button. It lets you kind of screenshot different aspects of the UI, so you can point to and leave notes exactly where you're kind of having a problem, and then you'll be able to get a high quality response then from the team to try and dig in and investigate that issue. Gordon, I know we ran into this with you too, right? We had an issue with a certain Yealink phone, and it just took a couple days for the team to investigate and figure out what was causing the problem. We were able to make it work then after that. So there will be device level issues that we run into over time with InTouch. But yeah, that feedback button is a great way to kind of accelerate that process. Or you just open a support ticket with us as well is the other way to address some of those kind of individual issues you may have. You see one question, is it possible to get SpeedFusion without the cloud? So that I think is basically what we were talking about. So we've got SpeedFusion Cloud, and then we've got SpeedFusion where you can run it. You can use physical Peplink routers and put those in data centers. You can use the Fusion Hub virtual machine. You can put that in, your own physical hypervisors. You can run that. So if you've got a customer that has their own VMware or Hyper-V infrastructure, you can run Fusion Hub there and use that as your own self-hosted SpeedFusion. Again, or you can put physical Peplink routers like a 580 or a an SDX Pro or something like that as kind of a SpeedFusion head end. Jonathan, I think you're using those SDX Pros as your SpeedFusion gateways. Is that correct?
Yes, Travis. We use the SpeedFusion Pro 710s, and then Fusion hubs, and then we do some complicated static routes between them so that everything can access it. But essentially, we use those devices up to their license limit as we're adding in clients, but we're able to seamlessly integrate all of that on a per data center basis. Obviously, you can't run the SDXs and 710s in locations such as Google East and Google West. And for those that aren't aware, Fusion hubs are great, but they lack some of the routing capabilities that the standard Peplink products use. So it just kind of depends on the deployment scenario where a client will be added to, depending on do they have additional requirements such as routing corporate network data, such as file sharing and things like that, or are they just needing to access one thing such as our voice over IP servers.
Nice. Yeah, it's it's a different path in terms of the licensing and the model you purchase to deploy it, and there's different capabilities there too. But the short answer is yes, there's ways to do it yourself too. I think the cloud environment is another good one too, because the Fusion Hub doesn't have exactly one-to-one all of the routing capabilities of the physical Peplink routers. It's got a lot of them, right? It's got BGP and some of these finer things, but we've also done some things in the cloud space, like with AWS. They've got a feature called Transit Gateway Connect, where you can basically ride the AWS global backbone to interconnect your different locations and sites, instead of before with Fusion Hub, you kind of had to have tunnels coming in from your edge locations and then tunnels going back out the internet to your other Fusion hubs or points of presence. And so we've been able to integrate with some of the cloud native functionality to improve the networking capabilities if you or your customers are heavy users of those types of services as well. So there's just a lot of options is what it comes down to, which is there's a lot to talk about and understand, but it gives you that flexibility when you get into these different scenarios as well.
There was a question by Lee, Travis, that you might want to go, or no, not Lee. There was somebody that wanted a more in-depth of how we configured the VPN tunnels.
Okay, yeah, I think we've kind of jumped
in the chat, or was that in the questions?
I'm not sure, but I think it's a good time to jump over to I'll jump over to In Control and start just kind of popping into some of these different features that we've talked about. Okay, we're back to
it was by George, Travis. I was really expecting to see best practices on setting up hot failover for VoIP.
Okay, yeah.
So I think just a combination of the priority levels on a VPN tunnel, and then also maybe an outbound rule as applicable, but I'm sure you got a couple examples. If not, I can find one as well.
Yeah, so I'll start there. So we're back into this In Control environment here. Hopefully you folks are seeing that.
Yep.
Okay, so first things first is we've got the SpeedFusion configurator right here. So if you've got your kind of own SpeedFusion infrastructure, which I do in this case, I've got a couple different nodes here. I've got this UBR and a Max HD4, and then I've got this Fusion Hub. So I've got this Fusion Hub in a cloud data center. It's just sitting there waiting for connections. So if I go to this PepVPN SpeedFusion configuration, you can see I've got this demo network set up here. So I've got this profile enabled. I've got my hub, which is that Fusion Hub, and then I've got this broadcast and this home location as endpoints on there. And so you don't really have to set a whole lot up here to make this tunnel all work. You can just check all the boxes, the devices you want connected. But then you can set some of your different WAN connection settings. So in my case, this is like my production bulletproof, it's got to work every single time type of demonstration, right? So I'm live with hundreds of people. I don't I don't have time for any interruption. So I've got my link failure detection time turned up pretty fast. So if a link fails, I'm going to know about it. I've got about 2 seconds a lag time there. But I've also got WAN smoothing turned on. So it's going to use multiple connections at the same time to protect my applications in this case. So, that's just a trade-off that I've made, right? I've chosen to eat that extra bandwidth on my cellular connection to make sure that it's just flawless and smooth every time. But you can set different, you've got different link settings here now that you can get into more individual settings on each end. So you can turn those settings on or off, change. There's just a lot of knobs and dials with SpeedFusion, which is great because it helps you deal with different scenarios that you might run into. But these are also knobs and dials you don't need to generally change to get up and running. It usually just works great without making these changes. But as you know how to deal, as you know there's problems and you have to deal with more problems, you can come in here and make these changes. You can also set up multiple tunnels at once. So you can have different tunnels for different applications. So you can have a hot failover tunnel and a SpeedFusion tunnel for, WAN smoothing or something like that. So you can send your Teams call through the WAN smoothing, and you can send your credit card through the hot failover. So you've got more efficient and targeted solutions for different applications.
Yeah, that's a great point on the existing tunnels, Travis, because you can have one connection up to that same SpeedFusion cloud or SpeedFusion and leverage different rules for either video or VoIP or credit card transactions so that you're not always eating extra data for your WAN smoothing.
Yep. And so, in my case, I'm using WAN smoothing right now. And so I've got all of my priorities set to 1. Basically, they're all in the same group together. And so they're all available to be used at the same time. But if I didn't want to eat up my cellular data, I can make those priority 2, right? And I'll only use those when my primary one fails, right? And so I can modify the strategies here to be more cost conscious. And I can even, in this case, I've only got one WAN connection in that priority 1. So I can actually leave WAN smoothing turned on here. And if my primary connection's on, it's really not going to use WAN smoothing because there's only one connection. But if that primary fails, then it's going to use WAN smoothing across my 2 cellulars. So again, there's a lot of granularity here, but again, it gives you just so much flexibility in how you deal with different scenarios. If I'm on my wireline, maybe I trust this one and I know it's consistent every day and I don't have to worry about, backup packets on different connections. But if that wireline goes down, I know I can't trust either cellular provider here to be consistent and stable enough for all day long voice calls, right? So then when I go switch over to cellular, in this case, I've got 2 of them. So then I can do the WAN smoothing only on the cellular side. So again, just lots of different ways that you can configure your combination of links to, deal with your cost, but also solve technical problems. But again, I'm just clicking all these things remotely, right? This is all pretty easy setup here that I'm stepping through. Again, there's lots of options here, but I don't have to pick most of them, right? I don't have to do almost anything to get this up and running at a base level. And then I can always come back in and tweak and change and, refine on that later. But my goal is always get it up and running first, and then we'll work on the fancier stuff after we get it up and running and routing and working the way we want it to. I'm going to just cancel that because I'm not going to make changes to my network right now, but I'll also show you the other side of this. If we look at this broadcast device, this is that one that's on that WAN smoothing profile. Oh, you know what? This is why I always like to invite guests, because I learn things that I didn't even know existed sometimes when I talk to our customers, and that's the best part. So these graphs are awesome because you've got these real-time statuses here. Jonathan, I think you were talking about using these tools live with your customers, and then you've got the graph view here as well. So, we can look at my mix of different connections right now that I'm talking to you through, right? I'm running this call through this tunnel right now. And so we can see, where the latency on each link is, what, kind of how much throughput we're sending through each link. Over here, you can see the different connections that are in this. So I've got lots of details on the cellular networks and the wireline network there, but yeah, this is my live tunnel that I'm running WAN smoothing on right now, and you can see it right there. And luckily I don't have any real packet drop issues to deal with right now, so it's, you know, more just insurance than anything at the moment. But nonetheless, that information's all right there in front of me as we're live here. You can also get into that in the router itself. But I want to switch over to the notifications part, because I think there's just a ton of functionality there that a lot of people don't realize is there. So if I'm in this group level here, for those of you that aren't familiar with In Control, there's different levels that you're at. And so the scope of what you're doing is controlled by what level you're at. So I'm at the group level now. So everything that I'm using in terms of these tools up here basically is of the perspective of all of these devices in this group. So if I come over here to settings and I go notifications, I can create notification profiles that would apply to all of those devices in this group. And so again, we've got tabs here, so you can set up multiple profiles at once, but basically I've created notification profile 1, I've enabled it, and I've said it applies to all devices in this group, but you can also use tags to zero in on a subset of devices. So if you only want to alert for routers, or if you only want to alert for customer A, if you've got a bunch of customers in one group together, you can use the tagging functionality and In Control to, again, get more granular within this group. You can also put quiet hours in there. So if this isn't a, you know, wake me up type of emergency, I can preserve my sanity in these hours. But there's just tons of different events that you can create alerts for.
Hey, Travis, can you swing down to the pushover and URL?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people don't bother to scroll down as far. Because I think even when we first talked to you, you didn't remember about the pushover. The pushover is, again, a really great, fantastic app. That's a third-party app, very inexpensive, and you can send notifications to that. But I saw another question on the forum about, or in the video presentation about, you know, a customer or somebody has tons of Peplinks, but, you know, the notification periods and things that are in control just aren't working out for them, or they need some additional capabilities. And this is where I'd highly encourage you to use the HTTPS notification URL, because you can ingest all of those notifications, and then you can write whatever logic you want to specify, you know, when these notifications are sent. Are they sent via email, SMS, or, you know, just develop your own infrastructure around your needs. And so the In Control will basically be the proxy. They'll get all of these notifications from all these devices and then ship it off to your URL. And then you can, you know, either work in-house or work with a consultant to get, you know, that strategy set up for your specific needs.
Yeah, and I think this is an important point, because, you know, In Control is great, and it does a lot for a lot of people, but it doesn't do everything for everybody, right? And it never will. So we try and make it as extensible as possible so that we can spill this data out to third-party systems and different ways to massage the data more specifically to what you or your customers need. And so, yeah, this is a great example of that. And again, a great example of why I like to bring the experts on like Jonathan here, because I didn't even really know much about this pushover integration or what the value there was. And so again, just another cool little Easter egg that we've got tucked in here in all these other features. But you know, there's so many different things that people want to get notified about, right? If I set up, like, you know, I've got cellular, maybe I've got 2 different SIM cards from 2 different providers that I've brought to the table, and they've each got their own monthly data bucket, right? I set up those data buckets in the router. There's different features in the GUI to tell it, you know, SIM A has this much data a month, and this billing cycle starts on this date, and SIM B has this cycle start date and this amount of data. And so you set all those up, but then, you know, now you can get alerted for that, right? You don't have to set up all your email gateways and do all this kind of crazy stuff that you used to have to do in the router itself. In Control is going to receive those events and then serve as that email blast place, so that you don't have to, again, set up yet more infrastructure to notify on these things. But SIM card switched over, somebody took the SIM card out, right? There's just lots of little things, somebody logged into the web admin, right? There's just so many different little events, WANs go up or down, right? I don't know what's important for you to know about, but there's lots of different things that you can know about if you want. And again, you don't have to notify everybody about everything. You can control, based on their account level within InControl who gets notified for these things, or you can just create a custom list for who gets notified about these things. And so you can have a silent period for one group of users, but a wake me up type of profile for a different group of users for the same type of events even. So these multiple tabs give you so many different ways that you can use this and kind of customize that, and maybe avoid some of that notification overload as well. Okay, what other items do we need to show folks in the
I know there was a
system?
question about outbound policies and making sure all your VoIP traffic goes across the SpeedFusion.
So I think I'll go into the router first to show you the outbound policies. I'll do that with just first pointing out we've got all of these things can be managed here in bulk. So we've got outbound policy, firewall rules, ACLs, VLANs. There's so many different settings that you can do in bulk to all of your devices. But I think just to understand the concept, we'll log into this router here and just show you, because I've done something fairly simple but specific at the same time. Okay, so this is that broadcast router that I was in. This is that tunnel that we set up and pushed to the device. So that's my SpeedFusion connection here. But if I look at the outbound policy, again, I'm using this for a very specific use case. This is my bulletproof box that anytime I'm live in front of people, I want to just plug into this thing and not worry about whatever I was tinkering with on my main router, right? I don't know what I may have done to myself that's going to cause a problem as I test out this feature or that feature, or try and configure these different things. And so I've got a dedicated box to just make my connection work great every time, so that when I get on these events, I know it's going to work every time. So for this device, I've got one rule, and it's tunnel everything to my Fusion hub. So I've set up this custom outbound policy. My algorithm is priority in this case. So if that Fusion hub is available, send it there first. If that's not available, send it to the hardwired WAN. If that's not available, then I've got cellular 1, cellular 2, and then Wi-Fi WAN. So that's kind of my pecking order of connections that I prefer to be on. And then, if none of those connections are available, I'm done, right? I have no more connections. So in this case, I'm dropping the traffic. But these work just like a traditional firewall does. So they're going to start from the top and go down to the bottom. And so if this rule were at the top, I may want to choose, well, this is the bottom rule, so I can't, but that if it's a higher rule, I can choose to just keep moving down the line and try the next rule and go that way. So again, it's granularity that you're able to achieve here and create different policies and different combinations of these rules to do different things. Last but not least is terminate sessions on connection recovery. That's basically fail back. So I'm going to fail down this list, but as a higher priority connection comes back available, I want to fail back up to my higher priority connection. And that's what that checkbox does for you. And so for me, that's really important, right? I do want to push my call back to that Fusion hub if that was interrupted for some reason. I don't want to keep riding unprotected if I don't have to, but some applications you don't want to do that necessarily because it may be disruptive to that application or something. So there's, again, different ways to do that. But I'm going to add a rule here because, we talked about a few different ways. There's lots of different ways that you can structure these rules to identify different traffic. So I think, Gordon, you and I talked about just, it's really
I
simple,
just pointed
right?
to the IP addresses of our infrastructure. And actually, because there's multiple IP addresses, we have a block of 100 addresses in our data center, so we'll just do a whole block.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can do it based on a domain name too. Like, if I've got my VoIPserver.com, I know that's my VoIP server. Anything that's trying to get to that URL, it's going to automatically send it with this definition, right? So you can choose lots of different destinations and again, that works just like a firewall rule, right? If my source is any, that condition's checked, so it's just looking at outbound traffic for that specific server, and then again, you choose whichever algorithm you want. One thing I'll say on the algorithms, there's I think a natural tendency to use the enforced tool.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's with great power comes great responsibility kind of thing, right? If I set it enforced to use this VPN, right? Like I know I always want to use the VPN, but the question is what happens when the VPN's not there, right? And if there's for some reason the VPN's down, this rule would black hole me, right? I have no failover when you use enforced. It is done if that enforced connection is not there. So you need to understand that is a very blunt tool, I guess, but some traffic you only ever wanted on this one VPN or this one connection, or there are situations where you want that, but I think most of the time using the priority rule is a better tool because you've got those options, or again, using a combination of rules and flowing down through to the next rule is another good way to kind of deal with some of these things.
Now, Travis, on the SpeedFusion Connect, would you say if you define the rules under the SpeedFusion, I'm sorry, not Connect, SpeedFusion Cloud, if you define the rules under SpeedFusion Cloud, are those essentially priority rules, or I mean enforced rules?
That's a good question. Let's look here. So we've got different.
I recognize that you can define the rules and everything through the wizard of SpeedFusion Cloud, but I think this is a good opportunity to just really quickly let people know the flexibility between the wizard and the outbound policies and the placement of putting those rules above the expert policies for different scenarios.
Yeah, so the SpeedFusion Cloud UI has some, again, easy buttons that you don't have for any other connection out there, but it lets you do things like, just pick an application, right? I just want Google Workspace to go to this SpeedFusion Cloud node, or I just want, my SharePoint or OneDrive or, Teams or whatever the application is, right? I can just map that to a profile. And if you've got multiple profiles set up, one for WAN smoothing, one for hot failover, those will show up here too. And you can, map those applications there individually. But to your question, Jonathan, that isn't an enforced rule. It's basically a rule that gets kind of squeezed in here in the outbound policy under this middle section. Yeah.
Expert area. Now that's the case for cloud applications, but if I said, I want you to route the Wi-Fi connection or this specific IP to a tunnel, I think it only allows you to do one, right? Like
yeah, that would be
priority setting.
Yep, that would be more of an enforced then. Yes,
Yep.
Exactly. And so, yeah, this little gray bar here is kind of the automatic. All the stuff that we do automatically is kind of covered inside of this little gray square here. And so PepVPN SpeedFusion by default is an automatically dynamically routed environment. So if you've got 5 different locations with SpeedFusion between it, it's going to automatically route private IP to private IP, right? Each side's going to have their own subnet, and it just automatically shares those routes and knows how to get from, your office in San Diego to your office in Texas. And so that stuff all happens automatically without needing to set up these outbound policies, because it knows, okay, my source IP is over here in this office, and my destination is some private IP that I know exists over there on the other side of the SpeedFusion network. So it's just going to do that without any special rules. But these rules are, you've got this expert mode so that you can add rules to maybe override that behavior, or to just, flow through down below that behavior. So
can you just add one and show folks the need, or when you would put it above or below the gray bar, because I don't think that's always apparent. And why would you want to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's called expert mode for a reason, because, it's just not as common to need to do that. But I guess if you want to talk about situations where you've had to do that, I mean, there aren't very many times where I need to do that in my use cases, but, that's a limited example.
So one of the reasons why you might want to add it above the gray bar is, let's say that you have some policies designed and implemented in the SpeedFusion Cloud section, for example, or natively through SpeedFusion using the OSPF route advertisements. So if you wanted to test some specific scenario or send traffic out a different WAN, and you want to override those sections, either the SpeedFusion cloud area or the OSPF route advertisements, and you want to make sure, I need to see how terrible this WAN is acting for this particular scenario, for this VoIP call. I want to enforce it to the wired WAN or a specific cellular. That would be a great scenario where you'd place it above the expert bar to make sure that there's nothing else interfering with it.
Yep. Yeah, because then you're kind of like skipping that automatic logic and you're just saying, nope, this thing has to follow this rule, and yeah, everything else keep doing the automatic.
Yep.
So yeah, that again, you don't always need that, but it's one of those things when you do, it's really nice to know that it's just as simple as dragging that rule above that gray bar. And so
do you have I'm sorry, do you have any sessions up that you can show under active sessions? Because that's another really great troubleshooting tool where people can actually see, am I sending out the WAN? Am I sending out the cellular? Am I sending it out the VPN tunnel? Because people don't know if the rules are even taking effect sometimes. Like, can you show the Zoom call, for example?
Yep. So yeah, here's the active sessions table. So it's just giving you an overview of here's all the different applications we've identified that you're using. Here's your different interfaces. And then if we click on this application like Zoom, I can see, like I said, I told this thing to tunnel everything. And so I know right now that it's going through my Fusion Hub through that tunnel, right? I can see every one of these connections. So that's your sanity check. Like you guys said, like you gotta make sure that it's following the rules the way you expected it to first, right? If there's something live that's not working, this is a good place to kind of start your investigation. Number one, is it going to the place I expected it to go to? If it's not, then you got to go back and look at those outbound policies, the expert mode, some of those things to figure out why it may not be going the way you expected it to. But if it is, then you know to go a different direction.
Yeah, that's a great point too, Jonathan, because we use it a lot. We'll click on SIP to make sure all of our SIP devices are going out across the SpeedFusion cloud.
Yep. And especially, it's great for any person that doesn't have a lot of experience in the Peplink. All you have to do is just put in the IP address of the device that you're trying to figure out where stuff is going, and you can immediately see, okay, it's opening up all these ports going to this direction. And if you're just not sure, like how to protect an application, you might fire up the application, go into the active sessions, put in your source IP, and see all the ports that are being opened, and then try to devise some outbound policies around it.
That's a great point.
Destination IP or ports or whatever.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I know there was a question earlier about somebody with some like Vonage business. They weren't, it doesn't seem like it's going the way they wanted it to. And so, yeah, just step one, I love that thought is, step one, just see where it does go on its own, right? Yep. So that you can start the call, make a call, come in here, click that refresh and see what all the sessions are, where they're all going. And you'll get some clues about, why that rule may not be working the way you expected it to, or maybe you missed some little thing about it.
And some VoIP providers may use alternate ports. It may not be under SIP. It may not be classified under a specific application, but, just, starting the call, starting a data transfer, you can go in and use active sessions to help kind of analyze and build your own protection scheme.
Yeah, and I think, one common mistake that I see a lot of people do too is they'll create an outbound policy for SIP, but they don't create a policy for the actual RTP. Audio traffic. Yeah, the RTP, right? SIP is just the call setup and tear down. It's not the actual audio. And so it's easy to think you've got your calls protected when you've told SIP to go this way, but you gotta figure out what the RTP, what the port range is for that, because that's usually a wide range. And so you need to, that's where the, setting rules based on the destination is kind of easy if you have that option. You don't have to care if it's SIP or RTP, but if you don't know what the end IP is with, Vonage would be a good example of that. They may have 100 different server IPs that this thing connects to. So I can't probably use that as my rule filter. So then yeah, then I have to figure out what is their, are they using 5060 for SIP? Are they, what is their RTP port range? And so then I can just create a couple policies based on that instead. Well, I think we've kind of dove into as much as makes sense for today. There's always more to talk about with Peplink and In Control and SpeedFusion, but just really appreciate we've had so many people stay on this long. And Jonathan and Gordon, especially your folks, all the time you guys put into preparing for this and sharing your stories here. This has been great.
Yeah, no problem. I really appreciate you having us.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Well, excellent. Thanks again, folks. And just a quick note, we are going to start trying to do some more webinars, like do some more focus, just deep dives on different features, different functionality. So we'll have some more overview webinars with different folks from the industry, but we're also going to start going deep into some different features and functionality in the systems as well. And we'll have guests on as well to cover those new features. So stay tuned to your email for more webinars that we'll be scheduling in the future here. Thanks again and have a good day, everybody.